It's no secret that the Timberwolves have really struggled with Karl-Anthony Towns only playing in 4 of their games so far. That's tough. Towns is the Timberwolves franchise cornerstone. He is surrounded by a bunch of inexperienced players and only a couple veterans and only a few players that have really been in the league for like a handful of seasons. There's a lot of rookies and second-year players that are trying to hold it down while Towns is out with his injury and with his health and safety protocol absence. But there's some elements to every NBA franchise. You have the coach, you have the players, and you have the front office. Now, who gets the blame for the Timberwolves' struggles throughout all of this? Honestly, it comes down to all three. The players haven't been putting in their best and greatest effort in a lot of these games, leading to some blowouts. The coaching staff has been running a system that doesn't really work that well. It's very simple, and it doesn't bring enough actions for the players that it should bring actions to. The defensive scheme hasn't been working with Towns not on the floor. And then the rest of the blame can be put on Gerson Rosas and the front office. The biggest thing that happened with Gerson Rosas is he left the Minnesota Timberwolves with no power forward options for the season. Now, there's some intriguing pieces in the Timberwolves power forward rotation. Jaden McDaniels and Jared Vanderbilt have both looked really solid this season. And then Juancho Hernangomez hasn't looked great. Jake Layman has not looked great. And like those guys might fall out of the rotation for the young guys. But it's still a question mark of what is going to be the power forward rotation for this Timberwolves team. So what's going on, guys? I'm Brendan, a writer for Wolf Among Wolves. I also run this YouTube channel where I do a bunch of basketball content in all various forms. You know, some just real life basketball stuff, some 2K stuff, just some reactions, and a ton of stuff. So if you guys could subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. It does help me out a lot. It helps the channel grow, which is something I really want to happen. Also, dropping a like on today's video and commenting helps us get into the YouTube algorithm, which gets the video pushed out to more people. So don't be afraid to do that as well. Today we're going to be talking about power forward trade targets for the Minnesota Timberwolves and what those possible options could look like. So again, hit that subscribe button and let's get into it. So as I was saying in the intro, Jaden McDaniels, Jared Vanderbilt both have put on some really encouraging performances. But let's be real here. At this current time, those two are not a power forward rotation that gets you into the playoffs. They have a lot of upside. They could be really good players in the future. I love both of them. I love the defensive tenacity brought by both. I love the offense that comes with Jaden McDaniels and the nonstop motor of Jared Vanderbilt. But the problem is, like I said, they're not getting you to the playoffs. And if you want to at least sniff the playoffs this year, you probably have to make a move after digging yourself in a 3-10 record hole that's just not good enough. Like, you're going to have to win a lot of games when Towns comes back to even get into the play-in conversation. So who are those trade options that could potentially save this Timberwolves chance of making the play-in tournament? I've come up with 3 names that I think could really be really solid options if the Timberwolves want to look into it. But before we get into the trade options, obviously I want to preface this by saying, one, you know, like Cat, D'Lo, Anthony Edwards, Malik Beasley, those guys are not getting traded unless it's for a star player. So we're not looking at stars here. Sorry, there's not going to be Ben Simmons. Pascal Siakam's not going to pop up in this video. Those guys, if you want to like throw D'Lo in and make it work somehow, I wouldn't totally be against that. But I'm talking like mid-tier players that you could get to help this Timberwolves rotation. I also want to preface this by saying that I don't know the availability of these 3 players. I don't know if they're super available, not available at all. Like, they could be had. They're not stars. They definitely could be had. It's just what the other team's asking price is and if the Timberwolves would be willing to pay it. So let's move to trade target number 1. It's PJ Tucker. PJ Tucker is a player that Timberwolves fans wanted to trade for all offseason long. He fits the bill of a versatile defender that can hit an open 3-point shot. But he hasn't been playing great this season, and his contract ends after this year. So the Timberwolves wouldn't have him for a super long time. He would likely sign somewhere else this offseason, which would leave the Timberwolves kind of high and dry. Is it really worth it for the Timberwolves to go out and pay a price for somebody that they're only going to have for like 3/4 or a half of a season? He's not probably raising the ceiling of this team to a playoff contender with only that amount of time. So is it really worth it? I personally don't necessarily think so, unless the asking price is low. And Kevin O'Connor actually did say that the asking price around the league, so far they're just demanding 3 second-round picks. Now, if the Timberwolves can somehow manage to trade away, say, Ed Davis, Jake Layman, and 3 second-round picks or something, or maybe 2 second-round picks in those players to get PJ Tucker, that's probably something I'd be willing to do. But if you're talking about throwing in any of the young pieces like Culver, Okogie, McDaniels, Vanderbilt, I'm not willing to put those players in a trade to go ahead and get PJ Tucker because PJ Tucker is 36 years old. And like I said before, he's on the last year of his contract, and I don't think he's sticking around past that. The second target I want to talk about is Larry Nance Jr. Now, obviously, Larry Nance Jr. is a Cleveland Cavalier currently, and he's playing really well for them, and the team is actually playing really well. They're the number 2 defense in the entire league, and a lot of that has to do with Larry Nance. Larry Nance plays, somewhere between a power forward and a center. He can switch between both positions, which would be really crucial for this Timberwolves team because you could play him alongside Karl-Anthony Towns. And if Towns is out for some reason, you can also shift him to play that center spot. So you're not relying on somebody like Ed Davis or Naz Reid to start. Naz Reid could still come off the bench in that situation. Larry Nance also has really been spacing the floor well this season. He's shooting 44% on almost 4 attempts per game. And we all know spreading the floor is a huge thing for Gerson Rosas at that power forward position. And it's something that like Jared Vanderbilt doesn't do. So if you're getting a lot more offense in Larry Nance and maybe a little bit less defense, you can definitely substitute Nance for Jared Vanderbilt. The asking price for Nance would definitely be higher than it is for somebody like PJ Tucker. Nance is younger. He's only 28 years old. And he would fit with this Timberwolves team a lot better than Tucker because he has more years left on his contract. The other part is, I think that Nance could possibly be had from Cleveland, but he's a huge part of their success. But the reason I say he could maybe be had is because the Cavs are a really young team. They have Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, and Isaac Okoro as their building blocks. They also have Andre Drummond. We don't know what that looks like for the future, but they just got Jarrett Allen as well. Maybe they could use another wing that can play some solid defense next to their undersized guards. Maybe somebody like a Jarrett Culver, who the Minnesota Timberwolves currently have. Now, I'm not too keen on giving up Culver in general, but if it is for the right trade for somebody that fits really well, like Larry Nance, I don't know what the surrounding pieces of that trade would look like, but I think that's a very interesting conversation and one that I definitely would be willing to have. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Timberwolves were willing to have that conversation as well. And the third and final target is one that has been pretty popular around Timberwolves fandom for a while. Sometimes popular in a good way and sometimes not. It kind of depends who you are, but that is Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon, as I stated, is probably either your favorite power forward option or your least favorite power forward option for the Timberwolves. Aaron Gordon is an okay shooter. He shoots in the mid 30% from three-point land on like a handful of attempts per game. But the thing with Aaron Gordon is he provides a lot of size at that 4 spot next to Karl-Anthony Towns, which is something the Timberwolves fans have been calling for a long time. Aaron Gordon is about 6'8" and he weighs 235 pounds. That is 21 pounds more than Juancho Hernangomez and Jared Vanderbilt, and 50 pounds more than Jaden McDaniels. So he obviously provides a lot of size there, and he still provides a lot of athleticism. The athleticism is something that would be very welcomed at that 4 spot for the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves don't have a true lob threat outside of Jared Vanderbilt. Maybe you could throw Anthony Edwards there, but the game really hasn't opened up in that way for him. Karl-Anthony Towns isn't necessarily a lob threat, so Aaron Gordon could be that for D'Angelo Russell, and that would probably open up the offense even more. Defensively, Aaron Gordon's no stalwart, I wouldn't say, but I think his defense is vastly underrated by a majority of people around the league. He's actually, at worst, an average defender, which I think coupled next to Towns' improved defense so far this year and his improved mentality on that side of the floor, I think it would work out really well. And Aaron Gordon is a guy that, even if he's not the smartest defensive player, he still has a body that can, hold up against these players, and he's still quick enough to switch on to some guards if he has to. So he fits the mold decently for what Gerson Rosas wants. And the way I think you go out and you acquire Aaron Gordon is by trading Ricky Rubio and whatever else it might take to get him. Their salaries match up pretty well that you can just work around, maybe around the edges to get it to work out. Maybe you provide some future draft capital. Maybe you give them a young player. Maybe you send them the rights to Leandro Balmero. But I think Ricky Rubio would work in Orlando because he is a playmaking guard that they don't really have in Orlando. Markelle Fultz is out for the season. He's an okay playmaker. Cole Anthony's not known for his playmaking ability, so Ricky Rubio could fill in that role really nicely. And at worst, he only has the rest of this year and next year on his contract, and they could potentially trade him as an expiring deal if they chose to. So I think that it could work out well for both sides. I don't know exactly what that trade would look like and how it would all break down. So those are the three main targets that I would say the Timberwolves have a realistic chance of going out and acquiring if they want to. I don't have any inside information on if they want to. I do know that they were interested in Larry Nance Jr. in the offseason, along with a handful of other power forward options like Derrick Jones Jr., Paul Millsap, JaMychal Green. And JaMychal Green is an option they could potentially go out and trade for as well. A couple other names I wanted to bring up are Lauri Markkanen and John Collins. Now this would take quite a bit of assets to go and acquire them in a trade, and the problem is the Timberwolves would have to pay those players this offseason because they will be looking for an extension off their rookie contract. And I don't know how the Timberwolves could manage that financially. Fiscally, it would probably be a really irresponsible move because you would go deep into the luxury tax to pay those guys, and you'd probably have to lose out on some other players on your roster and trade some guys that make a little bit of money just to make the money work. So I don't necessarily think that is the best option. Another player that is reported to want out is Marvin Bagley from the Kings. Now, Marvin Bagley III is an okay option, I would say, next to Karl-Anthony Towns. He was a highly regarded prospect coming out of high school and out of the draft, and he just hasn't really showcased up to his true potential yet. So it would be kind of a project for the Timberwolves. But I think if Marvin Bagley decided that he was playing next to, one of the best big men in the league and had a solid point guard that could distribute the ball to him as well in D'Angelo Russell. Obviously, he has that with De'Aaron Fox in Sacramento, but I'm just saying the combination of one of the best bigs and a solid point guard would be really interesting for him, and it would be interesting for the Timberwolves as well. But then Marvin Bagley would have to get paid, not this offseason, but the next offseason. And I don't know if the Timberwolves are willing to give up what it would take to get Bagley, or they're not really sure if it would work out the best in Minnesota. But anyways, those are the power forward options that I think the Timberwolves would be interested in trying to acquire and possibly could acquire at some point. Obviously, the trades would look different for all of those people I mentioned, but the Timberwolves have some options, and if they want a shot at making the playoffs, they might have to make a move sooner rather than later to dig themselves out of this 3-10 hole that they've dug. But anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. Check out all my other written work at awolfamongwolves.com. I also host a podcast called the A Wolf Among Wolves podcast with Brendan Hedke, so you can definitely check that out as well. That is also on the website. Also, I tweet it out on my Twitter a lot. That is at B_HedkeNBA. I appreciate you guys watching this video. Subscribe if you did enjoy this content. I want to make more content like this, not just about the Timberwolves, but about the NBA in general, so please make sure to hit that subscribe button. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.